Hey fellas, welcome to another episode. Today we're going to talk about the ongoing OpenAI saga. I try to make it a point not to speak about transient things, but considering what's at stake with what's happening at some of these top labs, considering the magnitude of this moment, I think we got to try to make sense of what's happening and what am I implying. Right, so what's happened, right? Well, the CTO, Mira Murati, she resigned a couple of days back, well, I think yesterday, and three other top researchers, I think two, the researchers left. I think the chief AI scientist, he left. I think that was a role that Bob Crew was in, and another guy left. And there's these names add to the long list of top executives from OpenAI who've left the company in the last 12 months. Usually, when you see this kind of churn at this kind of rate, startups are obviously full of churn, but with the stated mission and with their assumed pole position in getting to AGI, and with how passionate scientists and researchers are, or even engineers are about being in the room, I mean, that probably would be the holy grail. If anyone's interested in AGI, then one of the things that they would love the most to do, and if they're competent enough to actually work for these companies, the thing that they would want to do, like it would be the life goal, to want to be in the room where you can speak with God, right? Like you can just imagine that being the mindset of almost everyone who's working in these companies, and yet so close to the finish line, according to Sam Altman, who wrote this blog post a couple of days back, which had this line that we might be thousands of days deep learning works. Right, completely vehemently disagree with that characterization of deep learning working, and obviously, yeah, it's gotten us to this point. But pretty soon we are going to. You can't just extrapolate the past into the future. But anyway, so he said that deep learning works, and we are probably thousands of days away from getting to super intelligence. Don't know if they characterize what they mean by super intelligence, how they differentiate with AGI, but no matter what you think of the definitions, there's a general idea that we have got in our mind, right? With AGI, people come at from many different angles, but most people agree that there are certain common threads. One of the common threads is that the AGI system needs to be better than 99.99 percentile of humans in all cognitive tasks. Now, some people also have the embodied components latched onto this definition, like it needs to be able to make a cup of coffee, that's a cup of coffee test. Then some people have real world common sense tests, and tests in that category, right? So there are a range of tests, but we tend to agree that this is about these AGI systems need to be able to operate in a commonsensical way, and they need to be smarter than 99.99% of humans. They don't need to be better than the best of the scientists that we've got, and that is when you start moving towards AGI, right? So there's going to be now people who say that there's a gulf between AGI and ASI, that as soon as you go AGI, because by definition it's going to be recursively self-improving, it can check its code base, it can review and analyze its outputs and just tweak things. If we are still using the hyperparameter based paradigms as the deep learning paradigm, you can tweak things if we're using some other architectures. For example, if you can imagine a super intelligence that has the brain architecture that we have, then how would that entity go about improving its cognitive levels? I would imagine that it would invent some drugs which can make its brain a lot more neuroplastic than ours are. Like just neuroplastic, right? Like most people's brains solidify, and the neuroplasticity levels rates are pretty low. So they'd probably, that intelligence, super intelligence would probably, or AGI would probably invent some drugs, some class of drugs, or some class of nanomaterials, I think, that could make the noggin more plastic and also expand in size, like connect that noggin to another interface which has functionally unlimited processing power, not functionally unlimited, like you can just say one room's worth of brain. Like a tiny noggin, like look at the size of our brain, right? It's just this tiny. It has been able to, collectively obviously, but just a few people, the great man theory of history, right? Just a few men's brain intellect has been able to get humanity to where we are, where we've been able to split the atom, we've been able to go to the moon, we're on the verge of going to Mars, we're on the verge of becoming a multi-planetary species, a multi-solar system species. All of these things were accomplished by our tiny noggin, and yeah, obviously distributed intelligence is a huge part of it, but the broader point is that because we are still limited in our communication by language, right? So we still had to rely on extremely limited means of communication to get these objectives met. So you can imagine this entity where you remove these limitations of the interface, of the communication interface. So let's say that I invent another brain and I don't have to communicate with that brain using language, like I can communicate with it telepathically, right? What I would be able to do would far surpass what I could do potentially through it with even the smartest of people, right? So yeah, that probably would be what I would do if I'm an AGI system with a human brain-based paradigm. And then I'd probably increase the size of the brain, increase the processing power, just look at what the inefficiencies in the brain, because again we are the byproducts of an accidental process. It's kind of accidental, not completely, but kind of accidental in a way. And so there'll be lots of things which are quite inefficient. So I would get on working, like just dissecting people's brains, or maybe just observing my brain, just invent the kinds of technologies that we are so far away from, that would allow us to map out our thoughts, map out our brains functioning at the level of the granularity that we are so far away from. So that's what I would do, right, for an ASI system. So so that's the argument which some people make, to say that ASI and AGI are pretty close, that if you invent AGI, then all you need to do is get the AGI to work on improving its faculties, and because it's not going to be limited by the biological hardware that humans are, the reason that we can't really cognitively improve ourselves substantially is because of our, biological limitations, right? The size of the brain, the speed of the processing power, how quickly electrical impulses travel, our bandwidth, how much information we can take. Like I think it's on the order of a few megabytes, but only a fraction of it is actually sent to the brain for processing. Most of it is removed because we just don't have. So we miss out a lot of information. And like, I don't know if we could become a better species by taking more information. Like the bandwidth problem, I think, is a significantly smaller problem than the processing problem. I think so. Well, kinda, right. So I was just referring to the part where you observe things in nature for the most part. But there are things where if you're reading a book or if you're consuming a movie, right? An AGI system or an AI as well, our current models can consume books at the rate of thousands of books a second. And so they can ingest knowledge and digest knowledge and analyze knowledge at a far, far, far greater rate. So obviously the bandwidth is a huge problem. So you solve those problems and then you build a far better, far more effective, far more powerful brain. And once you start doing that, then probably within a few days, within a few weeks, depending on where we set the threshold of a super intelligence, some people might define it as an AGI system, one individual AGI system that is far superior compared to the collective intelligence of human beings. How do we measure that? I don't have any idea. I can make some rough guesses, but this is not the conversation for that. One of the things I'm trying to do with these conversations is keep them lean, keep them focused, because I've been observing that most of my conversations are going into the 30s, into the 40s, and a lot of that's just me rambling on, going in tangents where I probably shouldn't. So I want to learn how to be more constrained, how to be more focused in these conversations. That's one of the things I want to improve, to just make these more usable, more useful, and just more focused. Right. So that matters right off the way. Why does it matter what's happening with OpenAI? It matters because the superintelligence is just a few thousand days away, as Sam Altman's stating, and you could make an argument for why he might be overstating it or why he might be understating it, right? So the overstating argument might be something along the lines of, he's a marketing person, like, I don't think that he's technically gifted. I haven't seen any glimpses, no one's ever said anything. Most people have talked about PG, for example, other people that have talked about his ability to get people signed onto a vision, an audacious vision, and get them to do the best work for that vision to advance humanity's frontier of technology. The example that PG used in his essay or was it an essay, or was it just delivering a talk about, or it was just in part of a concept talk? But he said that Sam Altman is the kind of guy that if you leave him on an island, he will convince the cannibals to. So something along those lines, right? I don't remember the exact details. Give me a second. Yep, there it is. So it was a part of an essay he wrote about fundraising, and in fundraising, which is something I'd probably be atrocious at. Well, if I, yeah, to start with, right? To start with, but there are people who would be really great at selling a vision, and Sam Altman's one of those people. He almost sold a vision of $7 trillion investment into AI systems. And so what Paul Graham said about him all these years back, 10 years back, maybe more, is that you could parachute Sam into an island full of cannibals and come back in 5 years and he'd be the king, right? So that's high praise coming from a literal king in Silicon Valley, right? So that's interesting. That's interesting. What does that mean? That means that Sam is really good at convincing people, getting people to buy into a vision. And so he knows how to market. He knows how to do all of that, right? So that could be one. That could be why he might be overstating it to get more traction, to get more vision, so to get more buy-in from investors. He obviously wants to raise more and more funds for it. And the reason for understating it would be to not spread too much worry, too much panic into institutions, into governmental capitals, into for people, for that matter. Because there are a lot of people who are really scared about their future. They don't know what they're going to do in a post-AGI world, which is imminent. It could be 3 years away. Where on this, I don't want to go into the details of that because that's for another conversation. We're going to have a conversation about what the economic structures of the future look like. But no, there are people who are concerned, and you can understand the reasons for that. Why is this important? Why is the OpenAI saga important? If there's dysfunction, this kind of dysfunction, if there's any dysfunction, right, these people could be leaving for completely innocent reasons, like, okay, the company's grown, now it's like, I'm the kind of person who I wouldn't really want to say, like, I would be more gravitating towards the founder part of things rather than the CEO part of things, which is more about management. Once you've grown things beyond a certain scale, then it's about, making those few critical decisions. But you don't need to spend your entire day, and this is the key, this is why Elon Musk is so effective despite, wasting a ton of his time on Twitter, because he just needs to make a few critical decisions, and if he gets those right, then his companies are coasting through, they're exploding in size, and that's what's happened. So, and this is common with almost all the big companies, right? Once you pass a certain scale, you're going to hire the best people, really smart people, and then they're going to focus on segments of the business, of the product, of the technology, and then you're going to synthesize information that you get from those 10, 20, 50 people, and then you make the best decisions, like some critical decisions, maybe one critical decision a day. According to Jeff Bezos, he just needs to make 3 big decisions a day, or relatively big. For a company of that size, even small decisions might actually be seen to be big ones. So, yeah. But the point is that some people might probably be more attuned or accustomed to the startup environment, and they want to probably start something new. And because they've learned so much, being so close to how the sausage is made in the AGI labs, they probably would want to, and Elias Scaver, apart from always is concerned about the safety aspect, which is why he started a company, a literal company, which is a competitor of this, and he named it Safety Super. It's got to be a dig at OpenAI. Right, so it could be concerning because if this is a company, there's a pretty good odds that this company is the first company to get to AGI. I had hopes of doing that. I remember a couple of years back, I was thinking of wanting to just start an AI lab, forget about the other things I wanted to do, forget about building products. I wanted to start an AI lab just to devote myself to wanting to build the first human-aligned AGI systems, and I had some other visions that went into that lab. I remember having conversations with some people about I remember the passion that flowed from my rhetoric and from my vision, but it wasn't to be. And in hindsight, unless I had a miraculous stroke, it probably wouldn't have happened. So, you know, it's fine. It's fine. Like, what I do now, hopefully, I might not be able to get to. And again, you know, I don't want to take my ego out of it. So, okay, this is like, yeah, again, I'm digressing. So let's just keep it focused. Why is it important? Why is it important? It's important because there's this kind of dysfunction. The biases, the interpersonal and interpersonal dynamics, the ground on which this AGI is built, it's going to soak things in. The AGI, by definition, it's going to be a self-learning system. And so if it's going to be fossilized in an environment in which it's going to take these impulses, some of the worst impulses, power-hungry, narcissistic impulses from people, it does not bode well for humanity. So that's one of the concerns I have. But the other concerns I have is that if he's anywhere close to that estimate of superintelligence, there are certain economic models where the economic gates of, you know, being able to jump from different classes to, well, from one class to the other class are still open, but in a lot of cases these classes close, and I talked about it, right? Because if you commodify intelligence and it's superior to human intelligence, then humans don't have any edge in terms of building products. And building products, building companies, adding value, getting the alpha is how people would jump from economic class. That we lived in this unique period in human history where it was possible for people to go from nothing to building empires or tiny empires because of the, let's call it, the intellectual edge they had. But if AGI commodifies this, then that edge goes away. And that has been a concern that I have really been struggling with. Because I've got these long-term goals, and they depend on obviously short-term goals coming to fruition. Everything's just built on the longer we go into the future, the more that future relies on things in the past in a way. And so, if I'm not able to accomplish my short-term goals in terms of building the kinds of companies, building the kind of products I want to build in the next 5 years, so the kind of company, forget about the product, over the next 5 years, and not able to, you know, gather the kinds of resources I need for my next big project, the project that I probably would the project I would probably focus on almost entirely post year 5 from today. If I'm in a situation where that doesn't matter, because unless you've got substantial starting resources, there's nothing that you can compete with these companies, then that bodes like hell for me, like really. I also want to talk about a few other things. Seven days back, we were talking about what would your relationship be with an alternate version of you that has just been birthed right now, right? We've got this machine that can create a copy of you. At that point, when it's been birthed, every atom is completely where the atom is in your body, obviously because of quantum fluctuations, because of the chaotic nature of reality, you start diverging away. So we talked about that as a thought experiment. And right after that day, funnily enough, I found this trailer, this movie called Mickey 17, which has a very same premise, well, partially, where there's this guy who signs up because he wants to live forever, and so I don't know what he gains from this deal, but basically he signs up to allow his body to be recreated so that scientists can perform experiments on him, and they can kill him 10 times, 100 times, and they can see the results of whatever they want to study, right? So yeah, it was just a funny coincidence that we talk about that, and the next day this interesting movie. I think it's based upon something. Let me see what it's based upon. Right, so it's based upon a book called Mickey 7, but this director, he wanted to kill Mickey 10 more times, so you got 17 copies of Mickey. Yeah. But another thing I want to talk about is Meta just came out with their AR glasses yesterday. watch a couple of his interviews. He is a true visionary. You might dislike him, you might hate him, and some people, probably 3, 4 people, love him. But he is a true visionary, and he's probably the best founder CEO, the best CEO likely going around. To go from a social network, which in an age where there were social networks, right? That we had MySpace. I say we as in I was alive back then, or functionally alive, cognitively alive, right? The world had MySpace and net something, and yet he was able to he built us like this is the power of serendipity, right? This is the power of obviously partly it's luck, partly it's force of reality distortion field. Like this guy, when he started Facebook, he didn't want to build a company. He was like, okay, it's not a company, it's just a product. I watched an interview of his where he was talking about how he doesn't want to build it. It's not like he has this vision of taking over the world. So that was really interesting. What happened is that it just through all the things like, hiring the best people, growing at the rate that they were growing, coming from Harvard, but just gave it the kinds of credentials, the network, the kind of credentials that would attract universities. Like all the things went right, and like they just were laying these ducks in a row. And now we find ourselves in a world in which half the world's population is using Meta's products. That is truly astonishing. Nowhere in human history, at no point can you have said, like, probably at maybe half the population of the world has had a sip of Coca-Cola, maybe? I don't know. But can we ever say that after the entire after the entire world has used the product of one company, has used products of this one company? It is truly mind-boggling. And he's got this vision of a post-mobile paradigm, which is AR glasses are part of that paradigm. VR glasses, the larger glasses are a part of that paradigm. Thinks of it as the next big computing platform. And he's quite coherent in his vision, quite compelling in the way he lays it out. He talks about how it allows us to bring people closer together, which mobile failed to do because of its obvious limitations, inherent limitations. And so he talked a big game about how he wants to rectify some of the things that, and then he's obviously got this bravado about him now that he's like, one of the mistakes that we made was to apologize for the things that we probably weren't fully to should have been blamed for, and so he took back his apologies, which is really funny. But yeah, it's really interesting to observe that we should lots to learn from that, because as I said, he's someone that has reinvented himself over the last couple of years, especially the last year. He was able to take a company from a simple social network, which at the end of the day is not a technically sophisticated product, and then he was able to add so many distinct features. He was able to build one of the world's biggest ad engines. Combined with it, he was able to combine the world's biggest social photo sharing network. Yeah, I mean, the breadth and the scope of his vision, and especially the vision that he has now, is truly admirable, no matter what you think about him as a person and about his intentions. So yeah, and this also shows with these AR glasses, Meta's Orion, this spells the end for products like Human's AI Pin, which now looks like such a horrible subpar product compared to Meta's Orion, right? AI Pin, you put it over here, and you're moving away. It's not really going to be able to capture everything because your shot's just moving a bit about. While with the Orion glass, you can just watch everything. You've got like Tony Stark like capabilities. You can do like they've got a neural interface, neural hand module, so you can control things using your hand gestures. It's just such a radical improvement over what human AI could have been, and that tells you that there are a few things to take from there, right? Like there are the investors who are willing to invest in these kinds of companies just because of the names, the companies that these people work for, which probably wouldn't work anymore, because unless you are bringing something radically novel to the world, radically innovative, which the human pin turned out wasn't, then, and they've been working on this for 10 years, mind you, the Meta team. That is truly incredible. So products like Rabbit's R1, Meta's Humans, AI Pin, they're just relics of the past now. The entire company is like, these companies are valued for in the hundreds of millions of dollars, I think, and they're just going to be gone. So yeah, again, a wave of startups that are going to die. That happens with all of these things. My thing, the last thing I want to talk about is, and someone's asking me about this. So we're building Elinity, which is a social connection relationship platform. The big question I had to grapple with is, and this becomes more apparent the more I listen to Mark Zuckerberg, that how do you compete? And this, uh, more words about it now than I was a couple of months back, because I've been paying attention to the fundraising landscape. And so we had this chicken and egg problem. Like, we were building the initial product, right? So I've taken the leap from there. Like, I was just interested in, getting an idea out and seeing, courting interest from investors, but that would never do in this world. You've got to have a product, you've got to have some traction. So that's the approach that we were taking now. But the question is that the problem is that even that's not sufficient for most people now, most startups. So that's a huge problem for us. Because for us to be able to actualize our vision, even the vision for the MVP 2.0, or even the MVP proper, we won't be able to do that unless we got some funding. Because I'm running dry. Just maxed out my credit cards. I'm like taking all the risks I could have. Right? There's this proverbial time in every startup founder's journey. Well, not every startup. I don't know why I said that. In a lot of startup founders' journey, where they are facing this wall, and they run out of money. They'll max out their credit cards. They'll max out every single source of money that they could have used, and they'll launch something, gathering every single ounce of their will, and the fate of the longer term vision depends on whether the market receives it well or not. So I'm in this phase. I'm in that phase. It's very stressful. I haven't felt this kind of stress in a long time. Like, this is the kind of existential stress that it's almost like a dread. It's like I wouldn't call it panic. I don't think I'm capable of feeling panic anymore. But there's this pressure that I haven't felt, and I don't verbalize it. I guess let me talk about my emotions. Let's just make this a therapy session. I've been carrying this burden because, yeah, the longer term vision depends on the shorter term. And the shorter term, I'll just max out everything that I could have, like risk everything on this one roll of the die. Like, I can still pivot. Pivoting is not what I will need to do to survive, to live another day. Well, I think what I would need to do is just have a simpler version that I can find a way to run. I smile because, oh God, it's like that still needs funding, that still needs some capital. Like, I'm in this really tough spot right now. It's really, really God, yeah. It's so insane, right? Because on the one hand, I know that the windows are closing, and they're closing fast. I'm talking of the AGI window and the class solidification window. If I don't jump in the next year, within the next year, I'm done for. And I know I can model that future very clearly. And I would be cooked. My goose would be cooked. Yeah. And yes, I'm in this phase where I risked everything. A few months back, I remember I was in, like, 10 months back, I was in Bali, and I was going through my journals from Bali, and I was mapping up my future, about maximizing my chance of, getting to that first million, which is my target, right? Bootstrap your way to the first million, and then I had ambitious goals. Like, in nanotech, I want to build a company in nanotech, and there's also another more ambitious ideas I've got. But in order to get to that, I needed to have some amount of funding, and I never really liked the idea of raising funding. I don't like it much now either, but it's just something I have to put up with. But so I remember in Bali, and I remember I was sitting on the beach. Oh gosh, I remember this so vividly. I was going through the list of the most promising ideas I had that worked on some level. Like, I'd mapped out the feature sets, I'd mapped out who would be the potential users, the user flow, I'd mapped out some of the other details. and I was doing analysis, and all of them were kind of compelling enough that there wasn't one sure shot winner at that point. Yeah, this is like in December, and the sunset was a beautiful sunset, but this was post the sunset. The sun had already gone past the horizon. It started becoming dark, but I could see the clouds, the purplish clouds, and I was close to this mall. They were playing music. Remember the song? Well, I don't think I remember the song. I'm remembering another day, and I was like, I could feel the pressure then. I could feel it then, that I need to cross this threshold right about now with my bootstrap ideas. But I didn't. I didn't. For a few reasons. I mean, the three ideas that I picked, which were the most promising, I still think they're very promising. One of them, the most promising one, is the AI personalized tutor. It'd be interesting to. Okay, give me a second. Yeah, I still think that I didn't pursue a couple. Well, the three ideas that I worked on in the last 10 months because of a few reasons. Well, one of the reasons was that there was another competitor product in the market, and that already, even though my product was better, the product had already captured some of the initial markets, and so it didn't seem wise to pursue that. And then I started realizing over the last 3-4 months that maybe Alinity is the one big shot that I need to take, right? Because bootstrapping is not really going to get you. You won't be able to accelerate your progress with bootstrapping. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to bootstrap a business to get to even 100k MRR, because you literally don't have any funds, right? You're relying on the funds that you make, well, the capital that you make from your users, but that is conditional upon the number of users you have. So your growth rate is going to be pretty tiny. Like, even if you, yeah, that was a huge concern. That was a huge concern for me, and that made me think about needing to take the bitter pill once about raising funding. That's hopefully this is the last time I raise funding, because I've been watching videos and reading about building a board and how you're answerable to, like, your company hires you, even though you build that company with your love and your hard work and your sweat and your blood, you're still beholden to the whims of the board. And that wouldn't be a problem, because I don't think that there'd be any issues around performance. But the reason that I think that be concerning is I've got a very I've got a very particular vision for Alinity. Like, a part of it's going to become a standalone lab. I want to build an AI lab quad drive, so Alinity is going to become partly that. And I've got other things I want to be able to do with Alinity. And I feel that investors who care about, we're answerable to the shareholders and they want to maximize profit, I think that they would particularly be huge fans of it. But sometimes in life, trade-offs with everything, and this is my trade-off, right? This is a big trade-off that I have to make. I'm sure that I'll make bigger trade-offs. I'm sure that I'll have to maybe make bigger trade-offs in life. But this is one of those things that I just have to, because I need that boost, I need that acceleration, I need that pill. The VC pill. Yeah, so that was, so I could potentially work on, I don't know what I would do. I've got options on the table if I fail to raise funding, right? One is just make it so compelling, make Alinity such a compelling proposition, even as a bootstrap thing, that we gain the users that we want. Even if it's not at the rate that we would have with the growth engine in place, we still gain users nonetheless. Grow slowly, relatively slowly, but we still grow. And maybe if we got enough users, maybe sometime in 6 months we can go to investors. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is, I don't want to look too far ahead right now. I've been in this very weird few kind of a state. I was thinking about taking a meta look at my life, about the decisions. I took the path of a very high variance life. So there are decisions that you can make that can restrict the scope, right? For example, if you decide that I want to do this job, I want to become a consultant at McKinsey, I want to become a senior developer, senior staff engineer at Google, and there's a path to that. There's a pretty clear path to that. Yeah, and yeah, you can use that as an example for most people. Like most people have this thing that the path is the variance is pretty tiny, relatively tiny. The path I took, wanting to rely on my own stuff, was massive variance, right? It's high risk, high reward kind of a thing. And when you're so close to closing of the windows, you do start to. I mean, you should always second guess yourself, right? That's a part of growing as a person. Of having that kind of humility is absolutely important to be able to make better decisions in the future. Because if you think the opposite, that all your decisions were the optimal decisions, even with the knowledge, the information that you had, then what you're saying is that the position that you're in right now is the best of all possible lives that you could have lived. And in my case, that is nowhere close to true. Like it's the opposite of true. So yeah, I mean, I'm the first to concede that. Not the first to concede. Like I'm always open, always looking to find evidence for where I could improve my decision making apparatus, where I could improve my world model, my understanding of the world, right? Like decision making is obviously these elements are combined. That one part of, they are part of the decision making apparatus, but your world model is how you think the world works. It's how people work, how people operate, how startups operate, the different factors that go into success for startups, the different factors that go into building a great startup, go at hitting the milestones. For example, milestone 1 could be building a great product. Milestone 2 could be if you're interested in raising funding. That milestone 3 could be getting those really talented, really smart early hires. So all of those things, right? Yeah. But yeah, it's a weird time. It's a weird time. People don't realize how much things are about to change. And it's silly to think about things this way, but I would have preferred that the AGI uptake would have been slower, or AGI uptake for that matter, right? Because now with the amount of money, the amount of interest we are about to get to AGI, and that's just going to kind of solidify things in a way, and then open many things up that we simply cannot predict. So these are wild times, and it makes me feel a sense of, because everything that, all of our assumptions about the world, all of our world models, all of our heuristics, they all will need to be rethought in the post-AGI world. We don't know how to rethink these things. No one knows how to, like, what are the biases, what are the priors that we can build our new models on top of, right? We don't know. Like, there will be certain things that will still stay constant, like human nature, because Neuralink is not really going to become a thing anytime soon. So human nature is going to be relatively constant, be a relatively constant factor. But there are things in terms of the economic models that we have, which are obviously the most important models for me right now, like how to think about building a great company, making a big wave. Right, like those models will need to be rethought, they will need to be reinvented, and they are not startup friendly, in the very least. So yeah, well, you have to play the cards that we are dealt. Yeah, yep. Do I have anything else to share today? Oh, you know what? No matter what, I'll find a way. I'll find a way. Yep. Yeah. Even if the windows are closing faster than I think they are, I'll still find a way. Like if I don't raise funding, I'm gonna go the bootstrap route. I'm gonna make an app so compelling, so beautiful, so delightful, so much value adding that people cannot help but use it. Won't be able to help but use it. And yeah, once you got that, like all you need is making something that people want, right? The YC monster. And I think I've got enough of I've got a really a pretty good sense of the market in terms of what the market might need. Like LNT is a pretty compelling vision, I think. This is not just my bubble, my internal bubble, but I really think that, again, I understand some of the trends, some of the meta trends where we are headed. For example, one of the things that LNT can be, one of the ways it can be used is as a personal coach or a personal therapist, right? Because it's got all the context on you. And some people, to be able to optimize the other parts or to be able to streamline the process of finding the best fit people, they will want to also hopefully become more aware of their own interpersonal dynamics too, and it can be a useful aid and ally in helping you become better, right? So again, there are lots of competitors, but it's not going to be a monopoly, I think, some parts of it. So yeah, no matter what, I'm gonna find a way to make NFT win. Yep. Thanks for the time. See you soon.